without notice, the FBI, well, they popped by the NYPD Union headquarters today in Manhattan just to collect a few things. Some of us call such unannounced visits rude, but the feds like to call them raids. So now this NYPD Union that was raided, it's known as the Sergeants Benevolent Associations, and it's not small potatoes. It represents some 13,000 NYPD officers. Yet the details behind the raid, well, they remain murky. And here's what the New York Daily News had to say about it. While details of the probe remained under wraps, an FBI spokeswoman confirmed to New York Daily News that the agency was carrying out a law enforcement action in connection with an ongoing investigation into the SBA. So while details of the investigation remain relatively unknown, I could tell you what we do know is that the NYPD Union headquarters weren't the only pop by for the feds today. The justice agents, they also raided a Long Island home belonging to Ed Mullins. That's the union leader. Now, given Mullins' potential involvement, the Associated Press, well, they added a little bit of context that could give us some insight behind the FBI's raids. The AP said this: Ed Mullins is in disciplinary proceedings for tweeting NYPD paperwork pertaining to the arrest last year of Mayor Bill de Blasio's daughter during protests over the killing of George Floyd by police in Minneapolis. A department trial over the publication of NYPD paperwork in the Kiera de Blasio arrest began last month, but was postponed after one of Mullins' lawyers suffered a medical emergency. Mullins is also suing the department. Mullins' lawyer denies he violated department guidelines, arguing paperwork with the mayor's daughter's personal identifying information, such as her date of birth and address, was already posted online. That's according to the Associated Press. And it seems like, hey, I haven't seen too many instances in which police unions have been raided. So I'd love to know on first glance, how does this really sit with you, Cenk?
Awesome. Yeah, I've never seen the FBI raid a police union before. Let's just note for the record that the most powerful union in the country is the one that protects rich people's property. I'm sure it's a wild coincidence. So Ed Mullins consistently thinks he's above the law. He's constantly doing outrageous things, saying outrageous things, attacking Democrats, progressives, you name it. Like whenever it comes to any Democrat in office, they're like, you have to be neutral. You don't just represent Democrats, you represent Republicans and Democrats and everyone. Now make sure you do that. And then you got a cop who brazenly hates Democrats and progressives in a deeply Democratic city, and he flaunts it all around town. He has these outrageous quotes about just about everybody you can imagine. He's just totally out of control. Okay, that's a different issue. Then he does this, which is against department guidelines. And again, brazenly, the mayor's daughter, let me endanger her by putting up her address, shaming her, etc. But Adrian, I don't know that disciplinary proceeding is anywhere near important enough for the FBI to do a raid. So now I'm going into speculation here, but it's partly based on the reaction from people who don't like Mullins, including Mayor de Blasio, who seemed genuinely surprised at the raid, like they didn't know what that was about. It makes me think, no, there might be a completely different crime that they're looking into here, and perhaps a very serious one.
Yes, and I agree with you. And as you already touched upon, Mayor de Blasio, well, he had an interesting response, which is kind of, I guess, fitting for the situation, where he said in response to today's raids, I think he, as in Mullins, has been a divisive voice, but that doesn't cause me to feel anything in this situation because I don't know what's happening. All I hear is an FBI raid. I don't know the specifics. I don't know who it's directed at. I want to really hear the details before I comment further. And I think that's particularly interesting, especially when de Blasio is the one that had his daughter's information essentially put on the streets there by Mullins, who has been a member of the NYPD for nearly 40 years and took over the head of the SBA in July of 2002. And he's really built that reputation of being quite colorful, shall we say, when it comes to controversial language and attacking various people. The Daily News, they really noted that Mullins was already facing an internal NYPD probe over his bigoted statements on Twitter, in which he called a former health commissioner, Dr. I think it's Arixis, believe me, or forgive me, Barbo, a bitch, and a US Congressman, Richie Torres, a first-class whore. So it really seems that Ed Mullins is out in these streets, not only acting up, but hey, I guess really rattling the FBI's cage. Also, it's pretty interesting that Torres had reacted to the raid today by saying that Ed Mullins, who famously called me a first-class whore for daring to ask questions about the SBA, just got a first-class raid from the FBI. I really like that. It really seemed to be a little bit perfectly petty, but much deserved. And I cannot wait to find out essentially what is going on here. But we know that people really don't, FBI really doesn't raid union headquarters for law enforcement. But then on top of that, to have the home of the union leader raided, it makes me think, as you have indicated, that there is definitely something else very much illicit going on.
Yeah, guys, FBI is not going to do a raid because he insulted politicians. That's not how it works. And by the way, if they did, I would be totally opposed to it, no matter how much I can't stand Mullins. You don't raid someone's house because of insults or comments they make about politicians, even if they're in a position like Mullins is. And even where the issue of him outing Mayor de Blasio's daughter in that protest and putting out her arrest information, that really does not sound like an FBI issue. And if it was, wouldn't they have talked to de Blasio's daughter? So wouldn't de Blasio know about it? No, and then Adrian, they go and raid his house where they're almost certainly going to get his home computer. I think Mullins might be in a lot of trouble, and I think it might have nothing to do with any of this, but something that he did that is very illicit, and a completely different crime. Guys, remember, that's speculation. We don't know what it is yet. I want to be clear about that. But the fact pattern leads me to that, not even a conclusion, but that guess.
Yeah, but I think you're absolutely right. And also we have to remember that it's the US Attorney's Office, Southern District of New York, who has jurisdiction over Manhattan. And I used to work for that office, and they're the ones who've done John Gotti, Martha Stewart, partial birth abortion. They handle all the big deal kind of situations. So they don't really send folks in unless they come in to get somebody. So I hope Mullins lawyered up, because his lawyers are probably going to be working pretty hard in the next few months.
100%. I was an intern at the Southern District Attorney's Office as well. And so, and we worked on giant cases, and I was just an intern. They're not messing around in that office. They're not gonna go after petty little stuff. So there's an excellent chance that Mullins is in a world of trouble. And by the way, if we found out that the top union representative of the cops, who unfortunately, I mean, it's so sad because unions are good. You need them to help workers at giant companies like Amazon, etc. But unfortunately, the only union that's ever in the news is the cops union, the worst one that abuses people on behalf of the wealthy. To go after a cops union, if you're the FBI, and to go to his house and raid his house too, I would be shocked if it wasn't a major crime. So we'll find out. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.